Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you're safe. Hope you're happy. Hope you're healthy. Hope you had a great New Year with the family. And here's to a fantastic 2025. I'm going to raise a cup of coffee to you right here. Welcome to Thinking Out Loud from the home office in Southern California. My name is Andrew Siciliano. We have the Rose Bowl. We got the Cavs and the Lakers in town. We got all this college football, most of it which is meaningless, some of it which is very significant. It is a smorgasbord of holiday offerings on your television, including bowl games in which coaches and mascots do silly stunts, in which we're led to believe that Alabama should still be in the postseason playoff, despite the fact that, well, they just lost to Michigan, which doesn't have a quarterback. All those things can be true. Also can be true. Here's to a fantastic 2025. This is Thinking Out Loud. The man you hear with the polite chuckle in the background is my good friend, Sam Betesh. Happy 2025 to you and yours.
Absolutely. Happy New Year, Andrew. And yeah, I enjoy the bowl games. I remember the year that they had all the playoff games on New Year's Eve. That was a little odd. I think one and then smattering tomorrow will feel good. But the Alabama thing is always hilarious. That huge conversation that happens and then becomes completely and utterly meaningless once you lose that bowl game. It was Florida State last year, right? That was the conversation with Florida State. And then they went out and got absolutely housed in their bowl game. And that's what matters. So
yeah,
there you go.
And I had this argument with my father last week. And I said that he said, well, these bowl games are just glorified exhibitions now. I said, well, what were they ever? They were always glorified exhibitions. The difference was people took them seriously. Now that you have the playoff, that you have NIL, that you in essence have college free agency open already, the transfer portal is a thing, free agency has begun, then players have to make decisions. Well, if it truly is a meaningless exhibition, the fans show up, obviously people care, you're rooting for your school, all those things. There's team pride as well. But they are more an exhibition than they have ever been before. Then how are we going to treat these exhibition games? As a Syracuse fan, I love that Colin McCord stuck around through 5 touchdowns. That was fantastic. Now he's got a decision to make. The NCAA has to factor in that. Jackson Meeks, the wide receiver who came from Georgia with Fran Brown, he just declared. D lineman, O lineman, a lot of guys declaring, going for the portal, whatever. That's awesome. But it is free agency. Sam, consider this real quick. And we got sidetracked. No, we only have a few minutes here. But imagine if free agency opened wild card weekend in the NFL. Imagine. Because that's what we have in college football. And imagine, let's say, let's say James Cook of the Buffalo Bills.
Sure.
Okay. Right. Wild card weekend. James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. No, that's a bad example. Let's go to a team that has a bye. So the only team that has a bye right now, the Kansas City Chiefs. Noah Gray's coming off a great season. Let's say Noah Gray, the heir apparent to tight end. He's already there playing with Travis Kelce. Noah Gray is going to be a free agent. Free agency opens this week during their bye week. He has the ability to go, guys, by the way, the Titans just offered me 3 years and 30. See ya. And then he would leave. But you're leaving like that. That's what we have in college football. Free agency opens during the playoffs.
But even more fascinating would be, let's say, James Conner, a non-playoff participant, then joining a playoff team. I mean, that would be pretty interesting also.
Which you don't have in college football.
Of course.
You can't do that.
But
I mean,
still,
Malik Murphy left Texas last year and went to Duke before the playoff games or before the bowl games. But I digress. Let's focus on the NFL in Week 18, and let's get the Saquon Barkley thing out of the way right now. Sam, I know you're a big Eagles fan, obviously. Congratulations, Eagles. Yay! Okay, Eagles look good. They won again. They bounced back, and Saquon got to 2,000 yards. I am so happy. I am so happy for Saquon Barkley. Awesome dude. Awesome player. One of the great stories of the NFL in 2024. Not only what he has added to the Eagles, but the fact that he's back in Pennsylvania, he ran for 2,000 yards. I mean, he is an MVP as a running back. I don't want to have the MVP conversation. They're all deserving candidates, okay? And that includes Saquon Barkley, who would become, he's not going to get it, but he would become the first running back to get this since 2012. That is, if he got the MVP, which coincidentally was the same year that Adrian Peterson ran for 2,000 yards and he won an MVP. Saquon is the 9th running back to run for 2,000 yards. Do you know what the previous 8 have in common? None of them ran for 2,000 yards again. It takes an incredible toll on your body. Now, others had other great seasons. Barry Sanders, for example. Derrick Henry, for example. Plenty of guys have had great seasons after running for 2,000 yards, but no one has ever done it again. It's a one-and-done proposition. Saquon right now has carried the ball 345 times. He's also caught 33 passes. So he's nearing 380 touches on the season. That is an unspeakable toll on your body. You don't want that. You want to be healthy for the postseason. That's the most carries, 345, that any back has had, save for one in the last decade. Derrick Henry had a 380-some carry season for the Titans a few years ago. He's still going strong, but as you get older, you have to manage the carries. You don't run your running back like you used to anymore in this league. I hate to make the car analogy, but there are only so many miles on that car. And you need those miles if you want to win a championship. Sit him down, Nick Sirianni, week 18. For who, for what? To beat O.J. Simpson's record? I'm sorry, to beat Eric Dickerson's record? It's not the same. You're getting an extra game. Saquon got to 2,000. He didn't break Eric Dickerson's record. And if he were to rush for more yards than Dickerson, 2105 and 84, and do it in a 17th game, I'm sorry, it's not the record. And it would deserve an asterisk. And I'm not trying to replay 1961 with Maris and Ruth, but it's simply an extra game. It shouldn't be the record. It shouldn't. There is no use to put Saquon Barkley out there. And Nick Sirianni, if he were to do it again, would be doing his team, and honestly, he'd be doing Saquon a disservice. Now, Saquon, his opinion certainly matters here, but this is the coach's responsibility to say, I'm thinking bigger picture. I don't care what he thinks about an asterisk on the all-time record, but I'm thinking bigger picture. 345, Sam, is enough. That's enough carries. Think about getting to New Orleans.
And Saquon seems to be the kind of guy with the perfect head on his shoulders for this. He already was asked about hats and t-shirts for the NFC East Championship and said, yeah, I never got that. It obviously didn't happen for him in New York. And we know that there are bigger goals out there. So clearly he is thinking of those bigger goals already. And this rushing record is not the bigger picture. The 2,000 yards is enough of a stamp anyway. It feels as if in that Cowboys game this past week that perhaps they've already had this conversation.
Absolutely.
And it already was, let's do everything we can to get Saquon to 2,000 today so we don't have to have this conversation next week and make it about that. Let's make it a stamped season with 2,000 and leave it at that. They ran him aggressively in that game up until that point. And then after that, you saw him after it was 2005, essentially he was out of the game and that was that. And if they were going for the record, they would obviously have then run him harder in the rest of that game. At least that's what it looked like from an outside observer. It's got to be the bigger picture conversation. You have an opportunity now. You're not the 1 seed. You don't have the bye. So this is you creating your bye in this week 18. It's got to be done. I'd love to be on the other side of this. I'd love to tell you, no, you've got to get him out there. I'd love to be that lunatic that thinks you should really go for it. Would it be incredible? Yes, but it's already incredible, isn't it? You've already got so many things stacked up on the Saquon story. Anyway, he's been part of the MVP conversation. The fact that the Giants were so cataloged on this through the Hard Knocks offseason, the fact that it is your division rival and he has done this and led this team to this point, the fact that we were celebrating Rico Dowdle for a moment for 1,000-yard season in the same game when we're showing that Saquon has 2,000. I mean, the marker for an NFL running back is 1,000 for a good season.
Except that's only 63 yards a game.
Which is, you're right, not that big a deal. Although now when running
backs, it's a nice round
are,
number, we have a base 10 number system.
Exactly.
So, look,
and the fact that he's got 1,000 more than that, it's already been so special. And I was yelling at the television last night, wondering what the Lions were even doing with Jahmyr Gibbs in a game that I'm not going to say, you don't never want to say meaningless, but reality is that was as close to meaningless as it comes to the Lions.
It was meaningless. It didn't matter who won, at least for the Lions. They would still play the Vikings on Sunday night in game 272
for everything.
The division and the bye and the 1 seed on the line, regardless of the outcome there. And so it did seem, I fell asleep at halftime. It did seem to me, and I respect Dan Campbell, and I think the Lions respect him in the locker room as well. So they didn't care, and they said afterwards they didn't care. They wouldn't admit it if they did care, but they didn't care, and I believe them. I think he wanted a little bit, not revenge, but it's like, hey, last time we were here, we lost the NFC Championship game. Let's take this one seriously for a lot of reasons, but it could have backfired spectacularly.
Considering David Montgomery is that injury for them, considering what they've done at running back this season, and that part of their greatest, the biggest weapon the Lions had for most of the season was that they had two spectacular running backs to lean on and didn't have to go through what you just did in regards to the amount of carries. You lose Montgomery and still you take that chance with Gibbs. Look, didn't happen. All's well that ends well, but it just felt strange in the moment, and I'll follow you down this path. Saquon, as much as I'd love to see it. And again, the irony that he would break the quote record, asterisk, whatever, the fact that he would surpass Dickerson in a game against the Giants, yes, that's a little cherry as well, but he already smashed them in a game. And again, with the Hard Knocks thing, we've already, the 2,000 yards is enough. It's enough.
Yeah. And I know there are some headlines last week. People were stunned. Eric Dickerson says he doesn't want Saquon to break his record. Where have you been if you were surprised by that? Eric is not a close friend. We've worked together. We text every now and then. I love the guy. But Eric Dickerson has made it very clear year in, year out, when anybody approaches any of his records, particularly this one. No, I don't want him to break it. You kidding me? Eric loves being Eric. And it's good being Eric. And I say that lovingly. You don't want anyone to break his stinking record.
And the Dolphins pop champagne every season when the zero falls next to the record of whoever held on to undefeated to that point. So there you go.
Right. What happens if somebody goes 16-0 and then loses week 17 because they take their foot off, or loses their 17th game in their 18th week because they take their foot off the gas because they've already clinched whatever, the 1 seed, they don't need it. Will the Dolphins crack champagne?
That's interesting.
16. I realize they played 14, but you know what I'm saying? Hey, no, I am all for old men to hold on
the scenario
to their thing. Seriously, I'm glad they have something. It is a wonderful part of NFL history. The social media, I think, has taken it to a new level with the champagne and all that. But whatever. I sound like an angry man. I'm not. You don't. I'm just pointing it out.
But it would be. Imagine if a team did go 16-1 based on that last week sitting and win the Super Bowl. You would have to say that was it's the same accomplishment.
Yeah. Hey, look, the Belichick and Randy Moss quite famously went in and said, we want to keep doing this. You better not take us out. And they went for it and they got the 16th. And they lost, obviously, in the Super Bowl. Speaking of the Patriots, they cut Yannick Ngakoue officially just moments ago, which means he can join his 32nd team, I believe, and play for all of them before the age of 30. Amazing. Just absolutely amazing. Anyway, I digress.
Happy Hanukkah.
Right back at you. Hanukkah and Christmas together on the same day on Christmas night last Wednesday. The same day. It hadn't happened, I think, in 20 years. So it's much like a cicada. It happens every 18 years although there is no rhyme or reason to the way these two calendars match up. But yes, happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas.
Happy Yannick
Kwanzaa. Yeah. Happy Yannick Ngakoue. And Merry New Year, as somebody once said. So I told you something last week, and I took a lot of grief for it. I did one of my beach walk and talks, and you could see them on the TikToks or the YouTubes or whatever. And I went out there and said it is in serious jeopardy that this streak of 34 years with 4 straight playoff team, or rather, okay, here's the streak: 34 straight years with at least 4 new playoff teams that didn't make it a year ago. Since the NFL expanded the playoffs to 12, and now it's 14, but when they went to 12 in 1990, it's been every single year. It is the one NFL tradition truly unlike any other. 4 new playoff teams minimum every year. And I said last week that is in serious jeopardy. Serious was probably an exaggeration. And everyone came after me on the social medias. And I said, hey, it's not as crazy as you think. And they said, but, this team is in and this team is in. I'm like, only one of those teams you're listing has actually clinched the playoffs. That's the Vikings. I'm like, but the Broncos are in and the Falcons are in. I'm like, they're not. Maybe they will, but they're not now. Anyway, I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Like, it's in serious, serious jeopardy, that streak of falling. Right now, there are 3 teams that are in that didn't make it a year ago. The Vikings, the Commanders, and anybody?
Chargers.
The Chargers, correct. Sam's team. I was leaving it for you.
I love it. Thank you for that.
Yes, the Chargers. So those 3 teams are in. They didn't make it a year ago. If the Bucs win the NFC South, and all they have to do is beat the Saints at home in Tampa, they're going to do that. Okay? So check, Bucs are in again. That means there's only 1 spot open, and it's the final AFC wildcard spot, the 7th spot in the AFC. All Denver's got to do is beat the Chiefs. But do you really have full confidence they're going to do that? Do you really have full confidence that Sean Payton, after not going for 2, and he admits he has second thoughts, he should have gone for 2 in Cincinnati, that Sean Payton's team is going to be ready and Carson Wentz isn't going to just pick them apart? I know that sounds crazy, but Carson Wentz won Week 18 last year in San Francisco for the Rams. We've seen him in a similar situation. Andy Reid's not going to just lay down and die. So if Denver blows it, all Miami's got to do is beat the Jets. That's it, because Miami beat the Browns. Yeah, the Bengals won, but the Bengals right now are in the waiting spot. It goes like this. The Broncos win, they're in. If the Broncos lose and the Dolphins win, then the Dolphins are in. If the Broncos lose and the Dolphins lose, that means the Bengals can win and the Bengals are in. If they all lose, then Denver is in. Real simple. So I'm telling you, there is a chance, and a good one, that 34-year streak is over. All you need is the Bucs and the Dolphins. And if that happens, the NFL's longest streak of playoff turnover and, in essence, parity will come to an end.
Here's what was fascinating is that we started this season, you and I just throwing it out there. All right, who would it be? Who are the teams that could take over that didn't make it a year before? And again, one that would really, God, it seems hilarious now. The Jets was sort of a consensus with you. We were trying to come up with, all right, there could be 6 teams. Let's see, who could they be? And yes, the Jets, the disaster that was, means clearly that's not happening. The Chargers, good for them. Yes. Okay. I'm happy to be right on that. I just thought, okay, Harbaugh comes in and makes a quick, he turns things over quickly when he joins a new program. And yes, that has happened, but the idea that it really may not happen, when for so much of this season, it felt like, wow, look at all the new and shiny, and with the Broncos, et cetera, we thought, okay, it's absolutely going to happen. And then the dust settles, and all of a sudden, no one really thought the Bucs would be here the way that they are. And how funny is that? Even those that thought the Falcons, who still could make the playoffs, would be there, it was going to be because of Kirk Cousins, and that will not actually be the case. If they do make it, it'll be because of Penix. But it looks like it's over. The NFC West was anybody's to have, but the Rams did make the playoffs a year ago, so there you have it. And it's not going to happen, is it? It's not. Look, Broncos right
Denver
now, if it's stuck right now, yes, you'd
Denver. All Denver has to do is win. Am I rooting for the Dolphins to get in just to be right. Okay,
No, it's
sure,
fun.
maybe, but it doesn't serve me any good. What am I going to do? Post another video and take a victory lap on the beach? Who cares?
No,
Like,
I'm
don't,
here
I
for that.
don't have a dog in the fight is a bad way to say it. I don't, it doesn't move me one way or the
But it's a great
other.
historic note. It's
Yeah.
it's actually an amazing historic note, especially when you look across other sports and in your mind when we consider, we constantly tell ourselves, oh, these are going to be the playoff teams. You look at the year that you're in and you just say, all right, we're going to put all these teams right back in there. And so much changes that we don't realize. And yet this year it may not happen. But the Wentz thing was interesting because of how he played last year. And he'll obviously, and look, he'll be auditioning. Wentz in so many ways will be auditioning to say, as Andy Reid has said, that he could be a starter somewhere else. So it'll mean something. It'll absolutely mean something.
Which he did last year as well, week 18. And the other last note on this is that for years, this streak, for the first 30 years of this streak, it was a 12-team playoff. So that meant that minimum 4 out of 12. So you'd have 33% turnover. Look, some years it was 6 or 7 or 8 new teams in the postseason. Since COVID, we have expanded the postseason to 14 teams. So we're adding 2 new teams in each conference. So the idea that this streak would come to an end in this era where we've expanded the playoffs. I was talking to somebody with the league that, helps put the numbers together this week. And they said the same thing. Yeah, I wouldn't think this thing would come to an end now. You'd think it would keep going. It isn't over yet, but I am telling you, there is a chance. Now, again, the Bengals are part of that equation. They are in the 3rd spot, potentially jumping up if the other 2 teams, the Broncos and the Dolphins, lose. I know that we had talked, and Sam, even if I could pull the curtain back on our Browns broadcast Sunday, Browns lost to the Dolphins. We had spoken openly there where nobody thought that the AFC North games would be played on Saturday this week, week 18. But that is the case now. Browns and the Ravens in the 4:30 Eastern time window in Baltimore, and then the Steelers and the Bengals in Pittsburgh in that late window. Both of those games are on ESPN. The prevailing sentiment had been, even in the AFC North buildings, and I know this from all 4 buildings, that those games would be played at the same time on Sunday. In all likelihood, they would be played at like 4 o'clock Eastern. You want them played at the same time. What the league decided to do, because there are only so many games, honestly, that truly do mean something significant this weekend, is to play them back-to-back, give them to ESPN, and say, here are your games. And you say, well, wait a minute, if the Ravens win the division in the early window, they beat the Browns, and they're a heavy favorite, then what do the Steelers have to play for? Aha, they do have something to play for. They don't want to fall to the 6th seed. They want to win. Ravens win the division, they're the 3 seed. But if the Steelers then lose to the Bengals, number 1, it opens the door potentially for Cincinnati to get in, but they would know by then, right? But number 2, what it does is it pushes the Steelers back to 6, and then they have to go to Baltimore to play them again in Wild Card weekend. If the Steelers win, they have to go to Houston. They'd be the 5 seed. What would you rather do? Go to Houston and play a Texans team that's just okay? Or would you rather have to go to Baltimore again? Now play a team that you know very well, but you want that black and blue Ravens game in the wild card round? I personally would not in any way want that. So both of those games do mean something, and they're going to be played back to back. So the Ravens have a 92% chance, if you look at the percentages here, of being the 3 seed. They just beat the Browns. The Steelers have an 8% chance of being the 3 seed. Texans are locked in as the 4 seed. They're not going anywhere. 100% chance. They're the 4 seed. Can't move. They don't have to play. And they're playing the Titans. Tennessee is right now holding the number 2 overall pick. And Brian Callahan says Will Levis or Mason Rudolph both will play. That one's interesting. The Steelers, 59% chance at the 5 seed. Chargers could jump up if they win and the Steelers lose. They have a 32% chance at the 5 seed. And then the Ravens, that 8% chance. If they were to lose to the Browns, they would fall to the 5 seed. And again, the 5 seed has to go to Houston. The 6 seed has to go to the AFC North winner. And then whomever gets in as the 7 seed in the AFC, the Broncos, the Dolphins, or the Bengals, they have to go to Buffalo because, Sam, the Bills are locked in as the 2.
The best part of all of this is that either scenario, Denver, Cincinnati, Miami are all excellent stories as that last playoff team in, right? The idea that Bo Nix and Sean Payton were going to turn this around, and the idea that Russell Wilson's out. The funny thing would actually be Russell Wilson making the playoffs, which he obviously is going to. They're clinched with the Steelers, and the Broncos making it. It's kind of funny based on where he was and where that entire franchise was. Of course, now what if they don't and he does? That's also fun. And again, the number one passing offense, the number one passer in Burrow, the number one receiver in Chase, and the sack leader in Hendrickson for the entire season. For them not to make it seems ridiculous, but Cincinnati buried themselves. They dug their own hole, and so that would be it. And something you brought up many, many weeks ago, and nobody's really thought about this because everyone's so caught up in the fact that Cincinnati starts slow and they're going to get in. The Miami thing's a little overlooked. If the Dolphins make it, your idea about Tua as MVP is not so crazy. What this team did with and without him, and to make it now despite all of that and losing him the way they did, that Miami story would also be exceptional for the league to see Tua come back and make the playoffs again to bring this team, which was buried all the way back. So all of those are interesting stories. I'd love to see Cincy personally, but the Miami thing is also really interesting, much different than the way they made it last year, of course.
Yeah, the Dolphins were 1-3 without Tua. He was a surprise scratch last week. He showed up as doubtful Saturday, and talking to some people in Miami, they were surprised. Some people behind the scenes are like, why is anybody surprised? He didn't throw a pass in practice all week. Like, really? No one noticed that when practice was open for everyone to see, he wasn't throwing any passes. They did notice. They just figured it's week 17. He's going to get out there and play. As we tape this on Tuesday, there's no guarantee Tua is going to play. The under the radar story, when I say under the radar, literally no human is discussed it outside of South Florida the entire year, is that, yes, the offense different with and without Tua. But the Dolphins are here right now, even with all their injuries, because they have a top 10 defense, right? And Anthony Weaver is doing the same. Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter. You never know where the blitz is coming from, right? Simulated pressures thing in Miami. And while it may have started slowly, it is working now. And give the Dolphins defense some credit. Calais Campbell played his tail off last week at 7'3". He's still like a sight to behold in his 17th year, which is just amazing. Anyway, that is the AFC. In the NFC, there's this interesting note. Sam, you mentioned the Eagles are locked in as the 2. Ivan Urena, who does a lot of the numbers used to for the league and is still one of those guys that has great history on the seedings here, he pointed out that since we began this setup here with the seedings in 1975, this is only the second time that the 2 seed is locked in, but the 1 seed is in play heading into the final week of the season. The only other time was 93 when the Niners were locked in as the 2. And again, it was a divisional thing for the 1. It was the Cowboys and the Giants fighting for the 1 seed, and then subsequently the NFC East championship, the NFC East title. So that's what we have on Sunday night in Detroit, with the Lions and the Vikings battling for the NFC North title, and then the number 1 seed as well. You can make the argument the Lions need it more because they have more injuries. I would argue everybody needs it. You both need it, just like anybody would have been welcoming to that as well. In the AFC, who doesn't want a week off? Rest is better than rust every time. Take the rest. This is a physical sport. This is a longer season than it has ever been now that we went to 17. How we're ever going to go to 18, the physical toll is beyond me. But that's a different conversation for another time. Every tackle, and this goes, Sam, back to the Saquon conversation, 345 touches, 345 carries, 33 more receptions. Every tackle is a car crash. Like the average fan sitting on their couch this weekend watching football with a beer or a cup of coffee or a sandwich or a pizza, whatever it is, not questioning your physical fitness, but just realize that that average tackle on a 4-yard gain off left tackle that you don't even look up from your phone to see. Oh yeah, 4 yards. All right, 2nd and 6. That would feel like a car crash to you. Okay. It would feel like you're getting hit from behind at a red light and you're going to be sore for a week. talking about it with your friends and neighbors and kids for a week. Woof, man, we got lucky. I am still sore when I get out of bed in the morning. That's one tackle. Saquon's been brought down 345 times. An 18-game season is going to hurt for a lot of guys. So you want the week off. So that's what the Lions and the Vikings are fighting for. They're fighting for a week off, and the cap and the T-shirt and the celebratory stuff in the locker room as well. That stuff is nice and fun. Don't get
dropping from 2 teams getting the bye to 1 it was a subtle change, but wow, has it changed things for the regular season? And this will prove it. And that is the real celebration of what we have week 18 in this game. That's what's nice about Sunday Night Football, is that you drop all the way from having not only hosting every single game in the playoffs and having a week off to then being on the road wildcard weekend. There's just not a greater swing other than making or missing the playoffs entirely. So this is incredible. I'd argue Minnesota through the entirety of the season has kind of been that team on top, and it'd be cool to see them as the one, but sure, especially with what O'Connell's done and Darnold and that whole story. So I like that, whatever that's worth. But the car crash analogy, again, the Lions are the injured team here. So we'll see it, and it'll be exciting. Can't wait Sunday night.
Yeah, and more on your Dan Campbell thing. Like, why do you risk it this past Monday night in San Francisco, and it truly doesn't matter? I'll just go back to the Browns game real quick. Pierre Strong late in the game, got hit hard, concussion protocol. Jerome Ford, second quarter, ankle rolled up on. Don't know if he's going to be able to play this week. Denzel Ward makes a tackle, shoulder. So those injuries can and will happen. Oh, no, we're good. Just run the ball. No one's going to get hurt. Chase Brown, I mean, for Pete's sake, got hurt trying to run the clock out and not score for the Bengals on Saturday evening. So the injuries do happen each and every time you snap that ball, and someone's got to get tackled. It's a mini car crash. Here's to no car crashes on New Year's Eve. This is my final message. I know you're probably not going to listen to this anytime soon, but it goes into the new year as well. You see this phone right here? It's a phone. Don't drink and drive, friends, on New Year's Eve or this coming week or ever, because look at your phone. There's a button now on your phone that you could push and somebody will pick you up. There's literally an app for that. There's a drunk driving app. You just hit the button and you don't drink and drive. It's that simple. Remember, there is an app for that. Figure out your credit card bill for the $20 later. Okay? It's that simple. Sam, Happy New Year.
Yes.
To you, the family, the loved ones, everybody. And that goes for everyone listening and watching as well. Here's to a fantastic 2025. This is coffee and coffee only, at least for now. All right. I raise a CB2 coffee cup to you and yours. So long, everybody.